We thought it would happen before the season. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, made it clear that it wouldn't, and it didn't, but it's happened 4 games in. Veteran linebacker Jaylon Smith released by the team last night in a move that is surprising, but it isn't when you consider the motivation here. Big salary next year guaranteed for injury only if he suffers a serious injury. Now that they've decided, hey, this Micah Parsons kid's pretty good.
Yeah.
We got the resources. We can't spend so much money on the linebacker position. We got to move on from Jaylon Smith before he suffers the kind of injury that forces us to pay him next year when we know that by next year we're not going to need him. So let's go ahead and remove the Band-Aid now. That's the business reason. It's a cold, hard business.
Right.
We're reminded again, they go from loving you one day to hating you the next. The moment it's in their interest to move on, they're going to move on, and they did.
Yeah, they did. They moved on. I mean, hey, listen, I think bottom line, that's exactly where it is, and we're talking about a guy that, as far as been pretty healthy as an NFL football player, but there's an overarching still issue or, still a banner statement about his career, which goes back to his injury, his senior year or his junior year in college, where he would have been a top 5 pick and, ended up, lasting to the second round. But, the bottom line is, I think between that, Mike, and what you're saying, the money contract and everything there, the play on the field is just, it's not good enough. That's really the bottom line, too. He is a liability on the field. And hopefully they can, hopefully he can find somebody that can maybe get him back to where he was 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, we're showing some pretty good plays here, but people are going to have to take people are going to have to take my word for it a little bit. Here you go. You see, there's no explosion. There's no ability to cover anybody in space. And you constantly see it week in and week out. And we know this is Dan Quinn, Mike, right, in the Seattle scheme where, it's athletic linebackers are the thing that starts it and makes it successful. And, he's a little bit of liability in coverage or anything sideline to sideline at this point of his career.
He had signed a 5-year, $50.75 million contract. So they believed in him. They liked what they saw early in his career, and it was a great success story for a guy who had the devastating injury, felt around 2, worked and strived and ultimately thrived and got that big contract. But it's $9.2 million that he was due to make next year in salary that was guaranteed for injury. They didn't want to take the chance of having happen now what happened to him in the final game of his college career, a torn ACL, an Achilles tendon tear. We're getting to the point in the season where if that worst-case scenario happens, chances of being able to pass a physical, and usually the way it works, if you've got money that's guaranteed for injury, I think that there's usually a point that if you can't pass a physical by whenever it is, March, whenever, that's when the full guarantee kicks in. So you got to be look, it's a ruthless, cold business, Chris. It is. That's why we say to players like Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott of the Cowboys, get what you can while you can, because the minute it's not in their interest to keep you around, you're gone. So use the leverage while you have it, because the moment you don't have it, you don't have a job, or they squeeze you to take less, or whatever. But they like you while you can do things for them that will help them win games. The moment that balance, and there's a lot of factors on each side of it, the moment the balance goes this way, you're gone.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, and I feel for the guy. I really do. I mean, I like, he's one of those, Mike, where I don't have any doubt he'd be one of the best defensive players in football if that injury didn't happen his last game at Notre Dame. It was one of the freakiest college tapes I had ever watched at the linebacker position. He was that special. In that conversation where you'd go, he's the best defensive player in the draft, hands down, top 5 pick. But they have other players like you brought up, Micah Parsons, Vander Esch is in year 4, right? Be going into year 5. So they'll have the 5th-year team option. That's going to be a little bit more, or a contract extension. That's going to be more money to that position. They got some other young guys that are talented and certainly can fill the role if there are injuries. Jabril Cox, one guy that comes to mind, just the kid they drafted out of LSU, is really athletic. So I think between all of that, lack of good play on the field, and I think, signs of, I don't know what's happened to that leg once again, where, 2-3 years ago when they gave him the contract, certainly wasn't as explosive as he should be, but it wasn't a liability. And some point last year, it became a liability. And Mike, here, I just want to ask you this to get your feel on this, because, I mean, do you think there was something more to it, like, hey, we're not going to play you. We're going to bench you. And because he was team captain, right? So we're going to bench you, and then maybe he, didn't like the prospects of that, and that became an issue, and then he just said, release me. I mean, that has crossed my mind. I know it's the cold hard business, and that certainly makes sense, but I did wonder that a little myself, just because of the timing of it.
Yeah, I mean, even if they do decide to move on, there may be a level of respect that gets afforded to a guy, especially because you have to consider how the move is going to go down in the locker room.
Yeah, you're going to bench a leader.
Paid,
right.
Reportedly $500,000 to change his jersey to number 9. He didn't see this coming. He didn't pay $500,000 to change his jersey for 4 games. Right. Because now, when he goes to a new team, he can pick whatever number he wants with no cost at all. So he didn't see this coming. And it is entirely possible that they went to him and said, look, we owe you the remainder of your salary for this year, subject to offset. It's actually a win-win. If he goes somewhere else where he can play, any money he makes with that new team, the Cowboys get a credit this year. But the bottom line is they avoid that base salary next year that was guaranteed for injury. And, we see this all the time where a team says a guy's going to be released, or they leak that a guy's going to be released, and then before he is, there's a trade that happens. I'd be stunned if that happens here because of that 2022 base salary guaranteed for injury. No one else is going to want to step into the shoes of the contract that the Cowboys are avoiding.
No.
So he's still going to make his money this year. And, the other thing he could do, he doesn't have to play at all, and he makes $7.2 million.
No.
He doesn't
go
have
see
to go
some doctors,
sign with
see some
else.
people that might be able to fix that leg and get it back to a point where, we were talking about, to where he can maybe get back to that guy a few years ago. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, man.
You're right. But no, it's a good point. It's part of the back and forth. I'm not upset about it. You become a free agent in March. You're a free agent now. You can sign with anyone anytime you want. You can wait to see if a team has injury issues. Hell, there could be a spot that pops up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by the time it's all said and done. Richard Sherman just got a job last week. They've had so many injuries defensively. You never know how this season's going to play out, especially with 17 regular season games. So I think that even though basic concepts of pride and ego will make him want to get a place that embraces him and pays him, and it feels like it was just a temporary glitch in his career, his best move may be to just kind of take a seat, see how it unfolds. And if there is some medical intervention that could make the leg better, that needs to be, maybe he needs to shut it down for the whole year. This gives him a chance to take a step back and figure it all out.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think if I was, just being a guy that follows the sport, been around it my whole life, that's what I would tell him. Hey, man, don't try to – you're making good money. Your body's, had a lot of wear and tear on it already. Hey, let's see if we can find some answers, some other avenues, other doctors, whatever it may be, that can maybe get this leg. He had like the lazy foot at the one point, get all that nervous system working maybe to a little bit higher capacity. I would advise him to do that rather than, be impatient, be mad, try to prove to the world that I can still play, and go to a team and then put bad film on for more people, because now you're going to be watched even closer now that this has happened. So then more people watch you and go, whoa. And then now you got like another block of teams that just cross you off the list for good, because they're just like, oh, he's not the same guy. It's over, blah, blah, blah. That's what happens. Perception become reality. So hopefully he can find, some answers or get better. Certainly seems like a stand-up, awesome guy coming from Notre Dame, a leader of that football team. I feel for him. And like you said, it's cold-hearted, this business. It really is.
And it really does raise the question of whether the Cowboys handled it the proper way, because you do have the men who stay behind who may have been caught flat-footed by this, who may be upset by it, and may look at it and say, was it truly handled the right way? The Tuesday night press release with the 5-minute heads up to Shefty, I don't know that that's the way that you handle something like this. Maybe you have a press conference. Hey, why is Jerry having a press conference today? I don't know. We'll find out. And at the press conference, they lavish Jaylon Smith with praise, and they present it in a way that that makes it easier to go down in the locker room. That's what you have to be sensitive to, is how the locker room is going to respond to this, Chris.
No doubt.
And maybe with things going so well right now for the Cowboys, maybe you don't worry about that $9.2 million next year for now. Things are going damn well. And Jerry Jones says all the time, I'd write a pretty big check to get another Super Bowl trophy. Well,
right.
Yeah, you just don't. I mean, this may be the influence of the many Italian superstitions that my dad had, but man, when things are going well, you really want to be sure, if you make a change like that it's not going to knock things off kilter.
No, I'm Mike. I mean, listen. I hear you. I'll say the flip side of that also has crossed my mind, though, in the fact of, hey, leader, everybody loves him. Now we're gonna put him on the bench, right? Or not let him play as much, and we're trying to make that clear to him. That's why that whole, prospect kind of like popped in my brain of that. Maybe that's what happened. They were having a talk with him like, hey, man, we're going to have to decrease your snaps. It's not good enough. You can't run with running backs out of the backfield. You can't run with receivers, running shallow crosses. We need you to be able to do those things. We're going to cut out playing time. Maybe that's where he felt like, maybe that's where the Jones family felt like that was going to upset the locker room a little bit. That one of the leaders and one of those guys who's got a big voice in there now is not playing, and that can cause issues too. I don't know. It could go either way to what you're saying there, Mike, and certainly both have crossed my mind.
And look at it this way. It happens on a Tuesday night. We don't know the story behind the story yet. Chances are that the other team leaders were consulted, that it was explained, that it didn't just drop out of the blue for them the way it dropped out of the blue for us. And I think it would have been foolish to not make sure that everyone's on the same page, that everyone in the locker room understands this before it becomes public. That's entirely possible as well. So I think that the Cowboys are smart enough to know that they have a lot to lose if they disrupt the chemistry of the locker room right now. And maybe you're right, if they kept him around and he's unhappy.
Yeah.
And maybe he was already saying things,
right,
and doing things that manifested that he wasn't happy. Maybe he is happy to get out of there if he's not going to get played.
Snaps got cut down a lot last game, Mike. So maybe that could be part of the issue. It certainly could. So we'll see where it goes. But I know it's one guy that, we've talked about this from the start. We're both rooting for him. And hopefully he can find some answers and become a little physically better.
Is there somebody right now that jumps off the page at you as a potential contender that should swoop in and take him?
Ooh, no, not right now. I mean, listen, I would tell everybody buyer beware, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful to Jaylon Smith, but it's one of those things, Mike, where it's pretty glaring to me. It was a little glaring at the end of last year. And it was one of those like, okay, well, maybe he was banged up. Maybe, it was a weird year. Their defense stunk. But there's a clear difference in their football team when he was on the field as compared to if they had Van Der Esch and Micah Parsons at middle linebacker, or Keanu O'Neal and Van Der Esch, or Keanu O'Neal and Micah Parsons. They were limited for sure. And he's a liability there. That's where I would just go, I don't really think there's a team that's going to be able to break down film or watch him that might have a need and go, let's get him out here right now. He'll help our team. I don't, and I don't feel good saying that, but that's just the honest truth in my opinion of evaluating him.
Well, and as you said earlier, if there is a lingering issue with the leg, this is an opportunity to get it checked out, an opportunity to wait and see where the right spot may arise as the season continues to unfold, and maybe you come out of it with a Super Bowl ring. Maybe you get to cross paths with the Cowboys at some point in the postseason if it all unfolds that way.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.